guys, welcome back to my channel. I am the Scared Sheep, and today I'll be talking about the 5th episode of the Japanese mockumentary series Housou Kinshi. If you've missed any of the first 4 episodes, be sure to check them out. In episode 5, called Poet's Village, we find ourselves in a little commune out in the woods. A facility that's been created as a community for outcasts looking for a way out of their loneliness and suffering. Of all the episodes that we've seen so far, this episode is probably the most difficult to piece together, as not only are the clues a little all over the place, but there also aren't too many big clues, and many of the smaller clues rely heavily on knowledge of the Japanese language. But of course, I'll walk you through all of them step by step at the end. Before moving forward, though, I want to give a trigger warning for suicide and suicidal ideation. This episode contains scenes that some viewers may find disturbing. If this is something that would be bothersome or harmful to your mental health and well-being, then please consider sitting this episode out. And if you or someone you know is having harmful thoughts like this, please know that there are people who care and reach out to someone. Now let's jump into the episode and see if you can spot the truth. The episode opens to a handwritten poem hanging on the wall. It reads, "If you want to die, you should die. If you want to live, you should live. Because you are free. Because there's nothing to tie you down. But I want you to know one thing. Don't be the only one who hates you. You are not the only one who loves you, because that is the fate of mammals." Signed at the end by someone named Shijin. In a forest somewhere in Nagano Prefecture, we see a group of people enjoying a barbecue. The camera crew asks how they all know each other, and they begin talking about how they live together in this village called Shijin no Mura. Now, generally speaking, Shijin means poet, but in this case, it is also referring to the man who started the facility, who is named Shijin. The fact that the village sign is written phonetically in hiragana, rather than in kanji, leaves the meaning of the sign open to more possibilities, rather than if the specific characters for poet, for example, had been used. The people of this village come from all different walks of life, but all have one thing in common. They face difficulties fitting into society, something that Japanese culture and society strongly emphasizes, and ended up leaving their troubles with school, work, family, etc., to find a place here with others like them. Everyone here goes by a nickname rather than their real one in an effort to leave behind their old lives and begin again on their terms. We are introduced to the man nicknamed Shijin who founded this village. During the interview, we can see many poems plastered on the wall behind him. They talk about things like life and death, hope and laughter, alienation and society. Shijin, a former junior high school teacher, tells the camera crew that his main inspiration for creating such a facility was due to the death of one of his students, whom we'll call T, after he killed himself. He hopes that here, he can help those who would otherwise end up like T. We also get to hear from some of the other members of the village named Shu, Uchi, and Fuku. They all have similar stories about how they heard about this place through online communities and decided to give it a chance. Only Fuku mentions a bit of a different tale, as rather than losing her place in society, she says that 3 years ago she lost someone who was very, very special to her, and that's why she came here. In the morning, we get a glimpse into everyday life in the village. In order to sustain themselves without a typical income, the residents of the village work together to maintain a small farm with vegetables and livestock. The filming of the farm, however, is interrupted when some villagers notice one member attempting to take her own life. And while this is a rather close-knit group of people, events like these are not uncommon and remind us of the original purpose of the village. They are able to quickly take the woman, nicknamed Haniko, down, and she appears to be all right. After giving her some time to recover, the camera crew catches up with Haniko to hear her story. She talks about how her older sister actually came to this village last year and ended up hanging herself here. Having no other family, the two of them had always been very close, and she was almost like a mother to her. Too afraid to keep going in life without the sister who had always supported her, Haniko not only wanted to see the place where her sister had ended her life, but had also resolved to do the same. Leaving Haniko to rest, Shijin takes us to a security camera room. He says that the cameras are in place as a sort of deterrent to anyone thinking of taking their life, but also as a way to be able to monitor the facility in case someone still tries, which is how he spotted Haniko. However, we see videotapes that have been set aside with dates written on them, and Shijin explains that if anyone is successful, they set those tapes aside to preserve that person's memory. The camera crew interviews a few other residents about how Haniko is recovering. Both Shu and Fuku mention how she is not doing well, and they are worried about her. But Fuku says that they're watching, so it'll be okay. Going outside for the first time since the incident, we see that Haniko is actually getting to know another villager, who goes by the name S. Karma. It seems that he had actually been good friends with Haniko's sister before her death, and he wanted to show her the suicide note that she'd left behind. The letter itself is actually addressed to S. Karma himself. The letter reads, "I'm sorry, everyone. I can't do anything anymore. I do stupid things. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, but I really appreciate Shijin's help. I'm glad I came to this village. I wasn't alone." Reading her sister's final thoughts seems to have had a healing effect on Haniko as well as giving her someone that she can connect with. Slowly, Haniko begins to embrace life in the village and takes part in the everyday chores and social activities. Not long after, though, the village is shaken when S. Karma's body is found floating in the lake one night. Everyone is clearly very upset at the loss of their friend, but Shu seems to be taking it especially hard. The hardest hit by the news, though, is Haniko, who makes another suicide attempt.
そして詩人が恐れていたことが起こった。
人はね、死にたいって言っても、いざ目の前にその時が来たらね、必ず後悔する。やっぱり生きたい、生かしてほしいってね、必死に願うんだよね。君はいつだって一人ぼっちじゃないからね。ね。生きようね。生きようよね。ね。生きようね。ね。生きような。生きよう生きよう。ね。
After this, Haniko leaves the village, leaving behind a short message saying that she wants to try living a bit more and thanks everyone for all that they've done. Shijin believes that Haniko will be okay now and says that he will continue trying to help those with suicidal thoughts. The camera crew finishes filming, but catches up with Haniko 2 years later to see how she is doing. She says that after her second failed attempt, she thought she might as well give living another try. She seems to be doing well now and even has a part-time job in Tokyo. Returning to the village, it looks a lot different than it did the last time we were here. The village is empty now, and all the villagers seem to have gone their separate ways. We find out that soon after the film crew left, Shijin was found drowned in the river. The crew returns to the security camera room and shows many security tapes as well as home videotapes sitting on the table. They focus in on a particular date to start with and begin showing the audience the various recordings. Oof, this is a heavy episode. Okay, so what really happened in this village? If you haven't already figured it out, Shijin is our big bad in this episode. Let's start from the beginning and look at all those poems that he keeps writing and posting on the walls. The first poem that we see, as well as all the other ones, might initially sound like they are encouraging the reader to continue living, but really, they are more blasé about life and have an undertone of, if you're going to do it, then just do it and stop making such a big deal out of it. There is one that is less ambivalent, though, but not quite as obvious. On the poster, we see the hiragana for ne written 4 times. Now, 4 can be read a few different ways in Japanese, but one of which is shi. Put them together, and you get shine, which means die. Once you realize this, it's a little hard to insist that the poem has a positive meaning. We can also see that Shijin has an interesting style of handwriting when it comes to a certain hiragana, but I'll come back to that in a second. If you recall, Shijin says that he founded this village to help people who have been ostracized from society or who have suicidal ideations after one of his former students took his own life. We are shown a picture of the student, T, with his mom and dad. Do these people look familiar? That's because they're 2 of the villagers, Shu and Fuku, that we have seen frequently. Fuku even tells us that the reason she is here is because she lost someone very dear to her, which we now know is her son. We can guess that the parents suspect Shijin of having a hand in their son's death, and that's why they're here. In many of the interviews with Shijin, we can see the two of them watching him off in the distance. Afraid of what might happen if he is left alone, they keep a watchful eye on him. Fuku even says as much when she is interviewed after Haniko's first suicide attempt. She says that because they are watching, Haniko will be okay. But Japanese is really interesting in that you don't necessarily need to have an explicitly stated subject in your sentence. The way she phrased it, it sounds like she is implying that because they are watching Haniko, she will be okay. But in actuality, she means that it's because they are watching Shijin that she will be okay. In other words, they will keep him from letting her get hurt. Remember all those security cameras that are supposedly for deterring villagers from killing themselves? Well, the truth is, it's because Shijin likes recording people's deaths on camera. There are a number of instances throughout the episode where we see Shijin with his camcorder in hand whenever someone has tried to kill themselves. All of those camcorder videos we see at the end as well have been part of Shijin's sick hobby. First, we are shown the recording of Haniko's older sister's death, followed by Shijin actually being the one to push S. Karma into the lake. This is the only death that I'm aware of where it seems Shijin actually killed someone, rather than just passively recording them though. There is some speculation that S. Karma may have been the other son of Shu and Fuku, which explains why Shu especially had such a strong reaction to his death. But I think that an even more likely explanation is that both Shu and Fuku were upset that they failed to prevent another death, and may even feel that they could have prevented it if they had watched Shijin even more. Following S. Karma's death tape, we see Haniko's second attempt, and how, up until she was spotted by Shu and Fuku, Shijin was more than happy to just record her with no intention of stepping in. Did you notice the look of hate that both Shu and Fuku had for Shijin when they were holding Haniko? In the final tape, we see that it is Shu and Fuku who threw Shijin into the river, similar to how S. Karma died. It's odd that Shijin wouldn't have recognized the parents of the former student he apparently cared so much about, but it allowed them to finally accomplish what they came here to do, which was get their revenge. Which, honestly, should have been a bit more obvious to Shijin, because when you rearrange their nicknames as Fuku and Shu, you get Fukushu, which literally means revenge. The last interesting tidbit that I want to mention is the village sign. Coming back to the village 2 years later, we can see that it now hangs at an angle. This is not accidental, as it actually changes the appearance of what's written on the sign enough to be read in a whole new way. Remember when I mentioned that Shijin had an interesting way of writing a certain hiragana? I was referring to ji. Sometimes he writes it correctly with the two small strokes side by side, but other times he writes it so that they are almost on top of each other. This actually has an effect that makes it look more like the hiragana for ni. When the sign is hanging straight, this effect is less obvious, but when it's on an angle, the sign looks different and at a quick glance, looks like it reads Shinin no Mura, meaning dead person's village. No longer is it Shijin's village, but rather that of a dead person, fitting given that Shijin is now dead. I have a pet theory that Shu and Fuku may have done this purposefully after they threw Shijin over the bridge. But what do you think? And that's all there is for Housou Kinshi episode 5. If you haven't already subscribed, then please consider doing so. You can also hit that little bell so you get notified when a new video goes up. All of these things really help to encourage me to make more. Thank you so much to everyone for all of your support, and I will see you in the next one.
Bleh.